Week's message. If you would like more information about Morenci First, such as service times or ministry opportunities, feel free to check out facebook.com/MorenziAG or Morenci First at youtube.com. And two great ways to stay connected throughout the week is by hitting the subscribe button on our YouTube page. That way you'll be notified when something new is posted. And by hitting like on our Facebook page. Thanks again for joining us today. Welcome home.
Talking about influence matters. As you know, a couple of weeks ago, we started a new series called It Matters, and I've been so blown away by how it has really touched so many people and really touched me. And I just believe that God has a plan for the family, for us individually, that He has a plan for humanity. And that's kind of what this series is all about, all the different stages of life. And the bottom line is, there are some of us that are on the stage of being single and looking, or single and maybe not looking at the moment, but one day we'll be looking. Some of us have been married for a short amount of time. Some of us have been married a long time. Some of us are grandparents. Some of us are parents. But every stage of life is beautiful if we allow God in the mix. A couple of weeks ago we started with being single, and we said that, look, it's not about looking for the right person, it's about becoming the right person. How can I become the person that the person I'm looking for would be looking for? How can I be that person? And we also said, look, just because you're single doesn't mean that your life only begins after you get married, that you're worthy to God now. He has a plan for you now. It's not God's desire for your life His only desire for your life is that you grow up and get married. His desire for your life is for you to be a worshiper of Jesus, and out of that may come a family. And then we stepped into the dating realm, and we talked about what are red flags, and what should I be looking for, what should I not be looking for. And if I'm dating somebody that is crossing these lines, I may need to say adios, amigos, and move on. We looked at what the red flags are. And then we kind of walked into Dad's matter and the enemy's attack on the father, where he tries to bind the strong man so that he can plunder our homes. And then after that, we stepped into marriage, and we talked about what is a godly marriage, what is a true marriage. And I told you that marriage isn't a contract nor a piece of paper, but it's a covenant between man and woman and God. And He takes it very seriously. And we talked about the shedding of blood and what a covenant is, and how that is played out, and what God's design for that really is. And then we went a little farther, and we talked about 4 lies that I see on a daily basis that are destroying marriage or stopping it. And then last week we talked about 3 attitudes that are hindering marriage. So I think I've covered marriage on a lot of different sides here. Could I cover it all? There ain't no way. But I've tried my best to cover it as thoroughly as possible. Now we're jumping into parenting. And you say, why parenting? I'm not a parent. Well, almost everybody in this room is either going to be a parent, wants to be a parent, is a parent, or is a grandparent. Or has a parent. So this is for everyone in this room. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be very gentle. How can I not be very gentle after this morning? But there are a couple of moments here that I am going to take the liberty to sometimes step a little bit into our cornflakes, not so to mess us up, but so that we think a little bit. Because sometimes, as parents, we become center-focused. We become so focused on what we're doing that we forget to take a step back and actually look and see what God wants to say. Why? Because listen to me, and this is going to be a really big awakening for you. Parenting's hard. You didn't know that, I know. So parenting's difficult. Parenting today is even harder than it was 10 years ago. Parenting today is harder than it was 5 years ago. You know, not only is parenting harder, but listen to me very closely, being a child and a teenager is harder. With all the mental health issues affecting, you know, we have 7-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 11-year-olds that are suffering with mental health issues. They're being bullied, and now they're being cyberbullied. It's amazing what they're dealing with on a daily basis. Our kids are facing issues way earlier than we ever had to face. There was no such thing as cyberbullying when most of us were coming up. Cyberbullying. Our kids are facing issues even earlier than we can even think about. And then at a very young age, you know, we give our kids these devices here. And we give them these devices that give them access to everything they never wanted to see. We tell our 7-year-olds, our 9-year-olds, our 11-year-olds, go take this, have fun. Essentially, we're giving them, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I'm going to be honest. Essentially, we're giving them porn in a pocket. And we're hurling them into the world of TikTok and Snapchat and YouTube, where they learn all about gender confusion and sexual perversion and ungodly influences and on and on and on. Even before those things, you know, they have access to so much information as a young child. It's overwhelming. You know, they're not supposed to be dealing with the fate of the world before they're even able to shave. You know, yet we have our kids that are watching the horrors of the war in Middle East in real time on their devices, and we wonder why our kids are suffering. They take out their iPhone and they open up all the tragedies around the world and all the confusions and all the other stuff. And then we come in and we ask ourselves the question, why are they battling mental health issues? Why are they battling depression? Because a 5-year-old shouldn't be watching the war over in the Middle East. And we got ourselves into a mess. And you say, are you against kids having devices? And let me just say, look, I would encourage you to wait as long as you can, but I'm not against kids having devices. I'm against kids having unfettered devices, unmonitored devices, unwatched devices. I think if a parent, and listen, I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but if you have a child in your house, you should have some kind of safety on their device. I have a safety on my device because I want to live pure before the Lord. My kids have a safety. Now, Julia didn't have a device, but Emily has had a safety on her device until she turned going to college. Because we had a rule. My house, I can look at your phone. So am I against devices? No, but I would say I would wait as long as you can, but I am against unfettered devices. See, when it comes to parenting, one of my first questions is how can I lead my family where they will grow up and love Jesus? The overarching theme of my parenting, your parenting, should be how can I raise my child in a way that they grow up and love Jesus? And every decision that I make flows out of that pathway. Everything we're going to talk about today flows out of that thinking. Because look, what good is it for a man to have the whole world and yet lose his family? I want you to turn with me to Deuteronomy. We're going to talk about a couple things today. Some of you are going to say, wow, that's pretty awesome. And some of you are going to might say, you know, haven't thought of it that way before, and that's okay. But I want us to think out of the box of what the world is trying to put us into. Because let me just tell you, and I know you know this, and it's no secret, but our world is not family friendly. The world isn't designed any longer. Days of Mayberry are over. They're not designed any longer to have your family succeed. It's designed at this moment to sneak in the back door and separate kids from parents so we can indoctrinate kids and we can alienate parents. That's the world that you are dealing with, whether you're a grandparent, a parent, or going to be a parent. And you that are going to be a parent, it's probably going to get worse. All right, let's look at Deuteronomy 6, verse number 4 through 9. Do you have it, Josh? There we go. All right, here we go. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all of your strength. These commands that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Now, he answers the question, how do I disciple my kids? Verse number 7. Impress on your children, talk about them when you're at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hearts and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your house and on your gates. How do we disciple our kids? We make it common in our home, a part of our home. Listen, I'm going to raise our kids to love Jesus. To raise our kids biblically, I think we need to change a definition. A lot of the world would call themselves a Christian parent. But to be a Christian parent, in our world's vernacular, would mean that you are a casual Christian parent, which means that you pray when things get tough, you attend church when it fits into your schedule, and you are a Christian parent. I believe that we need to stop calling ourselves Christian parents, and we need to start calling ourselves Christ-centered families. Because a Christ-centered family has Jesus at the center of their home. They love God with all their heart, soul, mind. Jesus isn't an add-on or something that they involve themselves with. Jesus is the center focus of their life. So we're not Christian casual families. We are Christ-centered families, which means that Jesus is the center of every aspect of our family. You with me? So I am... Now, if you call yourself a Christian parent, I'm not going to be mad. I'm just saying I'm trying to change our thinking a little bit. I'm going to stop referring to it as Christian parenting, but Christ-centered families. Because I believe that there are a lot of Christian parenting out there, but there's not a lot of Christ following. And it makes a complete difference when we look at it. What does it mean to raise our kids in a way that they're going to love God with all of their heart? So with looking at this, what does it mean? What can we pull out of these scriptures? And we're going to look at quite a few today about helping our kids love God. So if you're taking notes with me, number one, write this down. We risk too little. We risk too little. Listen. In our modern day culture, risk and adversity and pain avoidance are the top values of most of our parenting. We don't want our kids to be hurt. We don't want our kids to have a hard time. We want to keep them safe as possible. We want to bubble wrap them, and we want to pat them on their bubble wrap, and we want to send them off safe, secure, and never bothered with. But if you and I were to go down memory lane to when we were growing up, the way that it most of the time happened is every Saturday morning, your parents would meet you at the door, kick you in your butt, and say, don't come back until the lights are coming on. Most of us were kicked out of the house on Saturday. Not that our families didn't love us, it's that safety, security, and risk avoidance wasn't their top priority. We did a lot of bad things in today's society. You know what? How I got a drink every Saturday? Sometimes it tastes good. Sometimes it tastes bad. Most of our modern parents walking today on the line, they're like gagging now. But that's what we did. I'll tell you something else that we did. I didn't even know it was wrong. But I rode in the back of a pickup truck. I sat on wheel wells. I bounced up and down. And every now and then you tap and say, go faster, go faster, go faster. Risk avoidance wasn't the top priority. There was like one rule: don't die. That was it. Don't die, be home before dark. If you came home after dark, you were going to die. But that was a whole other story. You know, that's just the way it was. It's not that our parents didn't love us, it's just their top value wasn't risk avoidance. You know, how we came up, you know, and I remember, and you may remember too, but you know who my seatbelt was? It was Mom, you know. It's amazing. I was thinking about it this week, and I was thinking about that. I was like, you know how they came up with an airbag? Some young kid was like riding with his grandma, you know. It's like airbag, you know. That's the way we grew up. And, you know, it's like risk avoidance wasn't the top priority. Now, listen, let me just be very clear with you. My wife and I were very safe parents. We believed in car seats. We believed in, you know, when they rode their bikes, they wore their helmets. I'm not against any of that. And I'm not telling you that we go back to riding in the back of the pickup truck, because I would have killed my kids riding in the back of the pickup truck. I learned better. But at the same time, we've got to allow our kids to grow up. And look, make them wear their seatbelts, make them wear their helmets, but look, when they're going down to check the mail, they don't need knee pads. We've got to allow them to grow up, and we have to allow them to learn from God. We have to let them learn, because look, you know, in our efforts to protect them from pain and suffering, we've robbed them from confidence. Listen, in our everything, robbed them from any kind of avoidance and any kind of pain. What we've really done is robbed them from any kind of confidence. And now we have 25-year-olds that won't drive because of the chaos of driving, and we have 20-year-olds that don't know how to fill out job applications, and we have 30-year-olds living in their mom's basement and all the other stuff because they don't have confidence. They don't know how to step out, and they don't know how to do that. We've not only robbed them from believing in themselves, but because we've taken away all the risk, we've robbed them from putting their faith in God. We've not only robbed them from believing in themselves, but we've robbed them from the ability to develop faith. Because a lot of them, instead of putting their faith in Jesus, their faith is in the bubble wrap that we've been protecting them in. So we've not only robbed them from confidence of how to step out and how to grow and be the adult, but we've also robbed them in a very valuable place in life, to trust God through all things. And Hebrews tells us that it's impossible to please God without faith. Wow, there you go, faith. Impossible to please God without faith. In the way that we're designing our normal families, we are eliminating the faith factor. So not only are we eliminating risk and avoidance, but then number two, we rescue too quickly. So we don't risk enough. We risk too little, but we rescue too quickly. Think about it. Mom stays up to 2 a.m. to help little Johnny with their science fair that they procrastinated or didn't do at all. And then after we fix their problem, we all go celebrate that we won the science fair. Always bailing out. Always coming to the rescue. You know, little Johnny forgets his coat at school. Dad leaves work, makes excuses, and runs and brings it to him. You know, back in our day, Dad would just said, if he had to come home without his coat, he'd never forget it again. But we jump in. But listen to me, consequences make for a great teacher. Consequences make for a great teacher. And if we rob them from consequences, we rob them from the lessons that come with it. And Galatians 6:7 says this, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. You reap what you sow. And when we rob our children of God's natural consequences, it's no wonder that they grow up not to fear God. And if we take away all the consequences, it's no wonder that they don't fear God or consequences. But we reap what we sow. So a lot of times we risk too little, but we step in too quickly. And if you think of the story of the prodigal son, and I love the story, most of us know it. Basically, a son of a rich man wants his inheritance early. He wants to go live his life. He's tired of being at home. So he goes to his dad and he says, give me everything you owe me and I'm going to leave. And he does. And he goes and he leaves and he has all these wild parties and he blows everything. And the next thing you know, he's eating out of a pig trough. Lost everything. But you know what I find amazing out of this story is when the son was coming back, the father received him with grace and love. But the one thing the father never did was go rescue him. The father received him with grace and love, but the father never went and rescued him. And there's a difference. The father received him with grace and love, but the father never chased after him. Sometimes we don't risk, and then we jump in too quickly. We get it wrong. We risk too little, and we rescue too fast. And we see that what happens is in this culture of doing that, and no risk equals no faith. And when we rescue too fast, we eliminate consequences, where we eliminate you reap what you sow, and we eliminate the fear of God. And tell me what our culture is missing today. We have to allow, now look, don't go overboard with me. As you know, I'm a protective parent. I do everything in my power to make sure my kids are safe within reason. I'm not against the seat belts. Our kids wear seat belts. Our kids probably were in their booster seat probably longer than almost any kid in the house. Why? Because we wanted them to be safe, but that was what was supposed to happen. But we don't want to bubble wrap them at the same time. So don't go crazy on me, but stay within what we're talking about here. Don't leave here, take your 9-month-old out of their car seat and say, Pastor said so. I did not. We risk too little, we rescue too quickly. Then number 3, we model too weakly. Listen, parents, grandparents, if we are not serious about our faith in Jesus, if we're not modeling a sincere pursuit of God, how can we expect our children to do that? Honestly. If we're not pursuing God, how can we expect our children to? How can we expect our children to do what we're not doing? And listen to me, the truth, is in that. If the truth isn't in us, how can we impress it on our children? Can I tell you something? And I want you to remember something. Parenting is more caught than taught. And I hope you write that down. Parenting is more caught than taught. We think it's taught, it's not, it's caught. They're watching what we do. They don't become what we say, they become what they see. They don't become what we say, they become what they see. Honestly, as parents, one of the easiest ways to drive our children from God is to say one thing and do another. The moment that we confess that we are a Christian family and a Christian parent and all the other stuff, but we don't pray and we don't tithe and we don't forgive and we don't serve anywhere, and it's all about our family, they know we're lying. The fastest way to drive them away is to be hypocritical yourself. In Mark 7:6 says this, look, they honor me with their lips, but their heart's not anywhere near. And a lot of our modern families today, we have great lip service, but our heart isn't following. We're modeling too weakly. If the truth isn't in us, listen, we'll never be perfect. But if we consistently claim one thing and do another, our children will run from the things of God. It's just the way it is. Can I give you a life truth? And please write this down. I want to give you a life truth. And I wish everybody was here to hear this because I fully believe it. Listen to me. Who and what you expose your children to will shape what they become and what they believe. Who and what you expose your children to will shape what they become and what they believe. If we consistently let our children be exposed to, I don't care whatever it is, whether it's a bad attitude or over-sexualized images or materialism or perverted thinking or ungodly values or whatever it is. Whatever we expose them to on a regular basis will influence what they become and how they believe. If we continuously let our kids be exposed, it's no question why our children grow up and not believe in God. You know, I have parents all the time, they'll come to me and they're like, I don't understand why my teenager is drinking. But every Saturday, they have a drinking party in their backyard. Now, they don't call it a drinking party. It's just a bunch of friends that come together, and they're constantly just... But then they wonder why their child that grew up in that atmosphere is now not seeing a problem with it. I told you we're going to get a little into your cornflakes, but it is what it is. I hear people all the time, I don't know why my child is questioning God. But at the same time, the friends that we expose them to and hang out with either don't have a relationship with God or they claim to have a relationship with God, but their lifestyle isn't honoring to God, but we can't throw them under the bus because they're our friends, so we have to validate them in front of our family, in front of our kids. So we're like, there's nothing wrong with Uncle so-and-so, yet we know he's not living right. So we're validating his unchristian life with the label of Christian, and we wonder why our children is confused. I don't understand. Why are they questioning God? Well, the exposure that we're exposing them to is constantly questioning God. And if that is the exposure that they are getting, we can't be surprised when that's who they become. You know, if we're going to parent in a way that honors God, can I give you one more life truth? Actually, I want to give you about 3 more. But can I give you one more real fast? Here we go. Listen to this. Please hear my heart. I hope you wrote the first one down, but this one may even be more important. Listen, we can't make, or you can't make your child love God. You can't make your child love God. But we can expose them to people and experiences that will increase the likelihood that they will love God. Gosh, that is good. One more time. Please write this down. You can't make your child love God, but we can expose them to people and experiences that will increase the likelihood that they will love God. Listen, as you know, we're a sports family. I grew up playing sports. My children are playing sports. But if your child can make it to practice almost every night of the week, but they're too busy to come to youth group and church, wrong message. If your child can make it to practice every day of the week, but they don't have an hour and a half to come to church, you're exposing them to the wrong thing. And do not be shocked when one day you ask the question, why is my child questioning God? Because listen, you can't make them love God, but you can be selective about the environment and the people you put them around. Ooh, that's good, Tush. I made that a life truth. You can't make them love God, but you can be selective about the environment and the people you put them around. It changes everything. You can expose them to the right people and spiritual experiences that will increase the likelihood that they love God. You can put them with the right people and give them the right experiences that will increase the likelihood that they will follow God. Because you can't mandate it, but you give them the right experiences and you put them around the right people that will increase that to happen. So what does that mean? You have to watch who they're hanging out with. You have to watch the sleepovers. You have to watch what you prioritize. Because you can't mandate that they love Jesus. All you can do is protect their environment. You say, oh, what kind of experiences? Well, good question. I'm going to tell you. What kind of experiences do you want to expose your kids to? Well, the first one is this. The joy of knowing Jesus personally. We want them to see us know God and have an impact on our lives by worshiping Him and being changed, being convicted. You want your kids to see that even Dad doesn't have it all together, and occasionally he asks for forgiveness and he's living a life before God humbly. By making and talking about Jesus as common. It's what we do. We're a Christ-centered family. So, of course, talking about Christ is a part of our culture. And you say, why do you want that a part of your culture? Because one day your child will have a question or even be questioning. But if it's a part of your culture, then you will always have a free space to talk about it. So what do? You develop a culture where Christ is common. You talk about it. We talk about the things of God in our homes. We're people of prayer. We give God thanks. Look, when you have an opportunity, when you're sitting around the dinner table and you're getting ready to pray over the food, you thank God that you have a job. You link normal things with God. You thank Jesus for what you almost get into a wreck. You thank God for His protection. You link the normal with the spiritual. You expose them. to the presence. Being people of prayer. Number two, you want to expose them to the presence and power of God in His church. That shouldn't come as a shock to you. But Psalms 92:1 says this: those that are planted in the house of God will flourish. Those who are planted. You see, a social Christian will go whenever it fits into their lives. A Christ-centered family will be planted in a church. See the difference? Let me ask you a question, and I'm going to get into your cornflakes for about 5 minutes, and then we're done. Let me ask you an honest question, and I want you to honestly think. What isn't optional in your family? What isn't optional? If you're going down the list, we would say, what's not optional? Well, going to school is not optional. Homework's not optional. A lot of us in here would say our activities aren't optional. We paid for you to be in that sport. You're going to show up to practice. But here's what happens. When the weekend comes around, someone has to come and ask, are we going to church tomorrow? Listen, everything else during the week that's important, there's no discussion. Little Johnny doesn't come to you every day and say, do I have to go to school tomorrow? Do I have to go to practice? Do I have to do that? But the very thing that should be at the heart of our faith and the expression of our love for God is up for debate every weekend. Is that in your cornflakes enough? Like, what's... Little Johnny don't have to ask about going to school, but every Sunday night we have to say, Mom or Dad, are we going to church tomorrow? Why do we have to ask that question? Honestly, we will play sports even when we don't feel good. But a lot of times if we get to bed 10 minutes too late on Saturday night, we're too tired the next morning. And we wonder why we have to fight our kids to come to church, because we have taught them that it's optional and that any little resistance will stop us from coming. So you know what they do every Sunday morning? They give you just a little bit of resistance to try to stop you from coming. Because we've taught them, hey, coming to church is so optional and any little resistance will stop me from coming. So what are they going to do? They've learned how to give you enough resistance to stop you from coming. Because that's the culture we've set up. And you say, how do you know that? Well, listen, they see us force ourselves to be at their ball games. They see us force ourselves no matter how we feel, no matter what we're doing. We're always at their ball games, but we're hindered to come to church by so many things. And we say, but I want them to know that I support them. And listen, I'm all about supporting our kids, but you know what my main goal is not for them to know that I support them, but to know that I put Jesus first, because Jesus is the only thing that's going to save them from hell, not my support. I would rather them know that I put Jesus first. Well, oh no, I want my kid to know I support them. Well, I want them to know I support them too. But I would rather them know that I put my Jesus first. And we've kind of taught, our kids aren't dumb. They watch us do everything in our power to show up at all their activities and all their ball games, but then watch us all the time have so many different reasons why we can't make it for a 2-hour service on Sunday. We've proven their theory. And we've wrapped it up in modern day parenting. Oh, it's all about support. It's all about showing. Well, no, actually, the greatest value system in your home should be having them grow up to love Jesus. Because you can't be there everywhere with them. Only Jesus will save them. And listen, if we're often prioritizing something over church, like sleeping in and going to the lake, but we're never prioritizing church over other things, we are clearly demonstrating our value to our family. Now, look, I'm not saying that you can't ever go to the lake. Look, we all need time off. We all need days off. No one's saying that. Don't go crazy. But I'm saying if you're always prioritizing everything else over church, and church is always a second priority, but you never prioritize church over anything else, then you are clearly demonstrating your top priority. That is showing your value to your children. And you will wonder why one day they will pick up on that, and that will become their value too. But what is your value becomes their value, it will take 12 steps back. And we see it, all the time. It's like we will do everything in our power to show up to this and to do that. But then we give off the signal that, look, actually, as much as I tell you out of my lips, Jesus is the most important, but what really is the most important is your ball playing, your football playing, your school activities, going to the lake, all the other stuff, because that's always our priority. But everything else, we'll take it Sunday by Sunday. Oh, everybody's quiet now. No one likes me no more. Let's go back. Go fill the bottle up with water. Let's start over. No, but honestly, I want you to think for a minute. I know I'm pushing you for a minute, but I'm trying to. I want you to honestly think. What are the messages you're literally sending? And you may wrap it up yourself, and I'm just trying to support them. Honestly, I get that. I'm all about supporting them. But if it becomes the message that speaks above Christ's position in your family, you better take a step back and get it right. Because there will come a day when your child will start questioning God, not wanting to come to church, and trying to make every excuse. They'll wake up every day with a headache. But then as soon as church is over, they'll be ready and willing to go to lunch or movies or whatever else. It's like a situational headache. It's really not. It's just the resistance that we taught them, that as long as you have a little resistance, it's okay. And it's become that culture. So what we've ended up doing is we've developed what we've sworn to ourselves that we would never develop. But the problem is that we risk too little. We rescue too quickly. And then, the bottom line is we model too weakly. But the law of parenting is who and what you expose your children to will shape who and what they become and believe. And then the other part is just as true. You can't make them love Jesus, but you can expose them to the people and experiences that will increase the likelihood that they will. You can't legislate faith, but if you have them in an environment where God is actively moving, your likelihood is eventually they'll catch it. You're like, what are you saying? Well, let me explain. Look, the greatest way to have your children read the Bible isn't by ordering them and forcing them to. It's by allowing them to watch you and mom and everybody else. And if you're doing it and mom's doing it and Sissy's doing it, it's just logical that I will do it. It's the culture. If I'm legislating it, they'll do it when I'm on top of them. But if it's just the family culture, they'll do it because it's what we do. Same thing with prayer. Same thing with church. Same thing with everything else. You can't legislate faith, but you can legislate and you can protect what you expose them to, who you put them around. And when you bring them to church on Sunday, one thing that you're doing right now is when they're in church, in children's church, in nursery, around a loving environment where Christ is being talked about, they feel his presence, they're more likely to believe in a God that they feel than a God that they're told about occasionally. So you want to hinder them from believing and wonder why they're not. But you got to ask yourself, who is the number one thing you're exposing them to? Because they will become and believe the number one thing you expose them to. That's why it matters. That's why this matters. That's why I believe so hard in camp. Because there's such a presence of the Holy Spirit at camp that I take atheist kids with me. And you can't walk on campus too much longer without saying, there's something in the air. You know what I'm talking about? I can't legislate their faith, but I can put them in an environment that will influence it. That changes everything. All right, I've meddled enough. Please put down your tomatoes. All right, worship band, come on.